Hey everyone, hope y'all are doing well and have had a good week. I hope you will join me while I paint today. I'm going to be painting sunflowers and daisies, and just a sunny, fun, colorful yellow flower that makes me think of summer. And Texas summers are very hot, but we have had 5 weeks of rain. It's been cooler. But now the sun has come out, and of course now it's very humid, but I'm happy to not have rain today. Let me just say that. So I appreciate those of you that are here. Just jump in and introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. Tell me if you're an artist, what your specialty is in art, or if you're an art supporter and are just interested in the process. Go ahead and introduce yourself. All right, well, I am going to go ahead and flip this around and get started. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is a little tip for you. Oops, sorry about that. I am going to show you my setup. So it's important, first of all, so this is how my palette is set up. And I put the same colors out every time. That way I know where everything is. It just becomes muscle memory, and I can just reach out for that color and not have to be looking for it on my palette. And then I do the same thing with my tubes of paint. So I have this little plastic box. I think I got it from Hobby Lobby or one of the art supply stores. And it's got these little dividers in it. And I just set the paints up in the same exact order that my palette is in, so I know right where to grab those paints. So that's just a little extra tip for you. All right, so we're going to be painting this sunflower and these daisies. Let me make sure you guys can see that okay. So this was a really beautiful arrangement that one of my daughter's friends gave her for her graduation. And it was just this huge bouquet of sunflowers and daisies and baby's breath. And it was wrapped in this beautiful craft paper with a little burlap string. It was just so gorgeous. So I thought it would be fun I always take pictures of any flowers that I get, or in this case that my daughter got. And I took them outside and just love the backlighting on this. So we are going to be painting this sunflower today. And as you can see, I have not started on it yet. I've just put in my grid lines, same as what I have on my photograph. And we're just gonna jump on in here. So y'all feel free to ask any questions, and I will do my best to pay attention and answer those. All right, so the grid is really helpful in kind of setting up all of your shapes. So I look at that and just kind of follow along. It helps me to be a little bit more accurate. And the great thing is about flowers is they're very organic, so they don't have to be exact. Just kind of coming in with a little bit of a darker color to support my yellows later. And I need to refresh my other iPad here so I can actually see. Here we go. Turn that volume down. All right, there we go. So Dana says she loves doing flowers. Me too. I just love colorful paintings, and flowers just make it so easy to come in and get lots of color in there. So just coming in, getting some basic generalized shapes here. They don't have to be exact. Just something to kind of get me started. I do all the fine tuning and detailing towards the end of the painting. So we may get to the end of the painting today, we may not, but if I don't finish it, I will definitely post the finished piece on my website and my Facebook page. And if you guys don't mind, I always appreciate when you guys share these videos. It really helps other artists to be able to see the free demos, and it helps me. And I'm just so thankful and grateful that those of you that do that, really appreciate it. So just staying loose. I like to stay loose from the very beginning. So if I were to come in with a pencil and sketch everything out first, it just kind of sets things up to start off real tightly. And since I'm wanting kind of an impressionistic feel, I don't want a really tight painting. I want it to stay loose all the way through. All right, we're gonna not do all these petals in here yet because I want to get these daisies in. Make sure I don't end up covering any of those up. And again, I may not be getting every single petal, but just getting a basic outline. And I start my first layer off using kind of a thin down translucent layer, and then build on top of that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of mark out where some of these daisies go. So looking at the centers, I think we'll start with those. Making my colors a little bit different than what they're gonna end up being, because I want those to really support that last layer that I put on. So looking for those centers, looking at where they are in shadow. Some are facing down, some are facing towards us, some are facing up. So just paying attention to those shapes, and that's going to help map out what these flowers, these little daisies, are going to look like in the end. We got one hiding up here. Let's go ahead and put that one in too. All right, so now what I'm doing is looking at the petals of the daisies, and again, I'm looking at value, looking to see which ones are in shadow and which ones are in the sunshine, and that's going to determine the color that I use underneath. And these, I want to go ahead and kind of scrape off some of that paint so I can insert those petals. Just take all that out. Don't really want that orange mixing in. I'm going to be putting in kind of a magenta tone to support the white. And that magenta and that orange, they're almost opposite on the color wheel, which means that they kind of will neutralize if they blend too much. So I don't really want that. Looking for other shadows. If y'all are just joining me, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. Are you an art patron or an artist yourself? What medium do you like to work in if you're an artist? Or what do you do if you're not an artist? All right, just little hints of those petals. I can always come back and detail those later. Let's see. Now I want to get the lighter petals that are more in sunlight. And actually, let me do this. I still see some more petals that are in shadow here, so I want to make sure I get those in first. So those are kind of underneath those other petals. Okay, so now I need a color that's going to support that white that's in the bright sunlight. So I'm going to go with a really sunny yellow color. And again, this is not going to be exactly like the photo. I can kind of be a little bit more impressionistic and free and use my artistic license if I'm just using the photo as a reference and not a slave to the photo. Hi, Carolyn. Carolyn says she lives in Keller, Texas. Ooh, that went away fast. There we go. She's a watercolorist and is learning to paint digitally with Procreate. Oh, how fun. I also live in Keller, Texas. Hi, Celeste. Sorry about that, y'all's comments keep disappearing on me. There we go. Celeste is an artist in training. You may have already said what size brush and canvas are you using today. I am using a tiny 6x6 surface today, an ampersand gesso board, and the brush I'm using right now is an 18 Bright Royal Sable Tech. I'm just looking at the direction of those little petals. We've got a little start of a flower there. I probably won't put this one in because it's kind of coming off the edge there. We may add it later, but it's not really an important element necessarily. All right, let's get in there and get the center. So that's going to be fairly dark. So I'm not going to go my darkest dark quite yet. I'm just going to kind of get that shape in, and then we can punch those values up a little bit later. Making sure I'm kind of cutting into where those petals are. And as we come out, I'm going to make this a little bit lighter. Let's see, Ida, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, says, a joy to follow your work from Richardson, Texas. Thank you for being here. Appreciate that. Okay, just coming in a little bit lighter on my edge here. And we're going to do something a little bit differently with the background. I'm not going to put quite as many of these leaves in back there. I'm going to put a few, but I'm going to carry some of the background color back behind those. And we're going to bump this up and make it a little bit more purple in the end, but we're going to start off with kind of a blue tone. So we're going to do that first, picking up some blue. Just coming in and around those flowers and petals a bit. So I'm not filling in every little space quite yet. I'm hearing lots of birds chirping today. I think they're happy there's a break in the rain as well. We've had a few days with maybe just a little rain, or maybe, you know, a day or two with no rain, but we have had almost every day for the last month or so. It's been raining. We've had a lot more rain than usual, which is great for the flowers. But there's been kind of a lot of flooding and just a little much, you know? So at this stage, I'm really not too worried about detail again. As I said earlier, I'm just trying to kind of fill my space in and have a platform to build on. So I'll come back in and fill in whatever else I need to there. But before I do that, I'm going to lay in little markers for my leaves I want to include. Okay, and I'm not paying attention to exact colors right now. Just getting placeholders in. And I just didn't want to overdo it with these leaves. We'll do a little greenery down in here. It doesn't have to be exact leaf shapes, just indications of color. We want the main focal point to be in this area. So there's a little bit of this showing above that little petal there. And it comes out a little bit more than what I have it. Welcome those of you that are just joining in. Thanks for being here. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and kind of fill in the rest of these little spaces. Get all of that background covered, and then we'll be able to dive in with the fun stuff and start building up that texture and those details. Let's see, I'm going to put in some of those darker values that are down below here. That's going to help give it a little bit of depth. You can see light peeking through and little shadows. So I'm trying to leave space for that. And to create that depth, those petals that are back behind are going to be darker, and then those on top are going to be lighter. So I'm kind of thinking about that. Hey, Carolyn from Lexington, Kentucky. Great to see you. How have you been? Carolyn went to Italy with us in 2019 when we went to Tuscany. So that was an awesome retreat, and Italy has opened up to Americans now, and we don't have to quarantine, so I am very excited about that. So we are moving forward with our retreat in October. So you might check that out on my website if you think you might be interested in going with us. It's a really awesome experience, unlike any other. Getting to spend time with other artists and learn in what else but Italy? I mean, how can you get more inspired? All right. Just kind of filling in all the little spaces, the little holes that are left. All right, so at this point, now what I'm going to do is look for my deepest, darkest values. It's very important to establish those early on. If you can do that early on and make sure you've got those really dark darks and have that contrast, that is going to make such a huge difference as you paint and help to keep it from falling flat. Coming in and kind of reshaping where those petals are. So our darkest area is closer to the left. We have kind of a circular thing going on in here. I'm just going to indicate that. And I'm not putting in all the little detailed, whatever those little frillies are called. I'm not a flower expert, so those of you that know, please feel free to let me know. Let's see, center is going to go a little more blue. A little more blue-green. So now I'm looking for my darkest greens. So I'm mixing up nice dark values of green. And I'm punching them in darker than I think they need to go because I can always come in later and pop in lighter values on top. But if I don't start off getting those dark values in to begin with, it just makes it harder to put them in later once you get those other colors laid in, that top layer. All right, there's not really a whole lot more I need to do there. Go ahead and pop in some of these stems. And a lot of this is going to really take shape once we start painting in those opaque colors. Let's see, we don't even have to do it exactly like we see it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just look and see, like on these edges of these daisies, we've got a darker edge. That's to the left, so that's going to help to give that more depth. And down on the bottom of this daisy here is darker and green. All right, I say we go ahead and jump in and start putting in some of those yellows. That's a big part of the painting, and once we do that, it's going to start looking a little bit more like a sunflower. So before I do that, so that first layer I've mixed medium with my paint, and so I have a lot of kind of translucent oily residue in my mixing area. So I just got to clean all of that out really good so I have plenty of space to work for my next layer. So I'm just taking this little palette knife and I'm just scraping off my glass palette. So one thing I love about the glass is that it cleans so easily and so quickly. All right, so now I'm going to start with more mid-tone yellows in here. I'm not going with the darkest yellows or the highlights yet. Kind of mixing up an orangey brown almost. Just moving around different parts of the surface here. They tend to lean a little more green as you come away from the light. So I think I'll save some little space there and keep these more orange and down in here a little more yellowy green. And I'm not even really looking at each petal shape at this point. Just looking at mass shape, looking at value. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move over to this side. We're gonna make those yellows a little bit more green. Kind of thinking about brush strokes and how to mimic some of those shapes. So I'm remixing a color that's a little more yellowy green, a little less orangey green. And as we build those up, they're going to get lighter and lighter, and the paint will start to get thicker, and the petals will be a little bit more defined towards the end. Carolyn is asking what medium I'm using. So it's a mixture of refined linseed oil and Gamsol. So Gamsol is my solvent that I use, and then the medium is a mixture of the Gamsol and the refined linseed oil. kind of going back and forth between my orangey yellow and my more greenish yellow. It's actually changing the temperature of those yellows. So it's important to have temperature shifts. Starting to do a little more defining now. And I think we'll start putting in some lighter yellows. So this isn't necessarily the absolute lightest. We'll pop those highlights on last. Just doing little bits at a time. And again, I'm not making it look exactly like the photo. Thankfully, sunflowers are organic and no two look alike, so I can just kind of play around with it and not have to be so glued to my screen. It's important for me to kind of study it and pay attention and see how those petals grow, but not so much that it's taking away from the spontaneity of creating the painting. Just going back and forth between darks and lights and cool and warm temperatures. Trying to create a sense of layering. Looking at how those flowers grow, how those petals extend from that center. All right, getting some of those up here in the front and some of those that are overlapping. That center, that's going to help kind of create a little bit more depth, bringing those forward. And before I get too carried away putting in all those highlights, we're going to start working throughout the background and start bringing all of that up as well, which is going to make it easier for me to kind of gauge the temperature of how light these yellows need to be once I get that background in. So we're going to do the blue first, and like I said, I want to push it more purple because purple and yellow are complements. It's going to push this flower forward and make it look like it's really standing out. So if you are a beginner artist and you're not real secure maybe in your color wheel or know about complementary colors or color temperature, I actually have a video that's getting ready to go live on my YouTube channel. I think the 15th, we're sending that out via my newsletter, and then it will have a link in there to the YouTube channel. So if you haven't already done so, make sure that you are following me so that you can get that information. And there's just a little video on the color wheel, color mixing, a little bit about temperature, cool and warm. So it's helpful to kind of have that information in, you know, no technique, because anybody can come in and paint, but if you don't really understand technique, then it's kind of a waste of time just trying to figure things out on your own. So let's see, I'm going to start with a little bit of a darker purple back in here, and then we're going to pull it lighter and warmer as we move around. And that's just a personal decision. It's not, there's not really any rhyme or reason as to why I am choosing to do that, other than it's going to just give it maybe a little bit of variation in depth. Also taking the time as I put that background in to kind of pay more attention to the shapes of these petals and allow that background to help form the petals that are just kind of randomly stuck there. So kind of helps for it to take shape that way. All right. Going to go a little bit lighter now and a little bit warmer. Just kind of allowing that to kind of transition gradually instead of having just a jump from the dark to the light. Then it kind of doesn't make sense, and those backgrounds don't seem to match up. And as I move up, I'm going to go even warmer and lighter again. You can see, though, those purples up against the yellow, how much it makes that yellow really shine. And again, just kind of bringing those over so there's a gradual transition. And there's more that I can fill in, but I like to kind of stop before I take it too far because I don't want to overblend things. I save all that towards the end. I kind of look at things and make an assessment and go back and just see if there's some random strokes that need adjusting. So I am working in oils, so it's very easy to do that with the oils. There are ways that you can do that with acrylics as well. Which I actually have an online lesson, and they're monthly lessons that go for the whole year. You can choose 1 month. The first month right now is free, so you can get in and kind of get an idea of what the lessons look like. But I don't even remember where I was going with that. I know there was a purpose. Maybe I'll think of it here in a minute. But anyway, so it's important just to bring everything up together. So I'm just doing a little bit back here, then I can come back and refine, but I need to kind of start putting those daisies in and getting the leaves in. And that is gonna help balance out all of my values. All right, we're gonna pop some of those pretty daisies in. So I'm gonna start with the little petals that are in shadow. So I've already got kind of a magenta color underneath, and now I'm gonna put a cool white. Just kind of changing the temperature a little bit to go a little cooler. Just as it's down below and not catching as much light. So we're going to get these little petals that are sticking up and getting shadowed. And I think I'll take that same color and kind of balance my composition out over here, looking for that little hidden daisy that's back here in the leaves. These that are higher up are not quite as dark in those shadowed areas, but there are still little petals that are in shadow. And again, I'm not doing every single one that we see here. All right, to help us see those a little bit better, we're gonna start putting in some of those really light petals. Going with a really nice, bright, sunny white. And I'm warming my white up, because if I were to just go in with pure white, that white is actually a cooler color and I want it to be more sunny. Got some nice bright tips on some of these petals up above. You've got hints of light peeking through some of these leaves back in here. Yeah, so if you're interested in the monthly lessons that I'm teaching, right now, for this month, we are painting French lavender. And it just went live this month. So each month is a different subject. And I've got 2 cameras. One is on the palette, one is on a close-up of the painting. So you'll get to see all the colors that I mix. I am very descriptive in the brush strokes and what colors I'm using, what colors I'm mixing together. I don't hold anything back. We've got a Facebook group, so anybody that has questions can ask those on the Facebook group. So it's a lot of fun. So you can check that out on my website, chrisbrandley.com. And I will put that link in the comments after the video. Just looking for other little places where we can pop a little bit of light back in here. There might be little shadowed daisies. I can come back in with some of those cooler whites that we created that are in shadow. Just put little hints of those back here. We don't have to spell everything out. Okay, we're going to put the center of those daisies in. That's going to tie those together. Nice sunny yellow. Got a hint of green in there. Just gonna start taking shape slowly but surely. Let's see, we've got a shadow on this one, so I'm just gonna put the lighter yellow out in where the sun is. Going in a little darker here in the shadow. And this one is not going to be quite as bright as I'm going to make it. I mean, in the photograph it's not, but I'm going to make it a little brighter there. Okay, and we've got about 10 minutes left, so I've got to think about some of the most important elements here that I want to include. Just going back and forth still with those temperatures. And let's go in with some more sunny highlights. Going with a little thicker paint. Those last pops of color and highlights towards the end really start to help the painting come alive. Pop in a little highlight right there as catching light on the tip. Little hints of light down here on the bottom. I don't want to do too many highlights on this side because the light is really hitting the tops and the petals that are more on the right of the flower. But I do want to balance out. There are little hints of light peeking through. And this petal here see if I can define that a little better. So it's actually bending in. Thank you, Margaret. Margaret says beautiful color. Appreciate that. We're getting there, aren't we? Slowly but surely. Okay, gonna come back and reshape this petal so it makes more sense. And I need to go real dark and deep on some of those yellows that are down in shadow. So I'm picking up some purple tones. So right above this one, we've got shadow. I like the glow of that, so I don't want to take all of that away, but I'm going to come right up beside that and kind of deepen that shadow, deepen that value a little bit. Pull some of these purples into the sunflower. Warm some of these petals up slightly. Got to create a little variation in here while not going our lightest light. And not covering up all of that pretty undertone. Okay, we've got more dark shadow right behind this sunflower here. We're going to use that to kind of carve in between those two petals, create a little more depth. And we've got a mid-tone yellow right in through there. I want to try not to cover up too much of that purple that we just laid in. Still want to indicate that we have a yellow sunflower. And we've got a nice bright highlight right on top of this one. Okay, let's put some of these stems in on these green, on these daisies. Put some green stems on them, little highlights. Kind of connect this a little bit, help it make a little more sense. And I think I want to put some of that background purple back behind here and separate that a little bit. Let's see, we've got this one. Actually, we need to define the middle of this one. So it's pretty much in shadow. So I'm not going to go too bright. I'm going to go with a cooler blue or green. Looking to see where else I can put those values. Help kind of define these flowers a little better. These little daisies. All right, one thing, well, we still have to put these green leaves in. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Making up kind of a neutral green, mid-tone. Let some of those kind of poke out into the background. Just taking that darker value and kind of pulling it up into my leaf. And as I build these leaves in the background, I'm starting with this kind of mid-tone, and then we're going to build highlights on top of that. And we're just going to let those shapes just kind of fall in without really trying to make leaf shapes. Once you put in just those general shapes, the viewer's eye is actually going to read those more as leaves. So you don't have to, again, spell everything out. We want this area to be kind of loose. And we want our focus to be more on the sunflower. And then we start building in those highlights, those lightest greens. Really create emphasis. Just little hints of light kind of peeking in between some of these petals. Now I'm going to come in with my lightest highlight. Really bump that up. And I'm just going to be very selective on where I do this because I don't want to have so many of these light highlights that it takes our eye away. But it just helps to create a little bit of a sparkle. And I feel like this stem is really thick, so what I can do is take my background and come in and just carve it down. It's really no big deal, it's just paint. Okay, and then the last thing I like to do is come in and just start tying things together a little bit, refining things. And I'm even kind of thinking of putting in a slightly lighter background. And we've got purples, and I'm going to take just some light blues and come in and just allow some of this here just at the top to blend in. Just take that out. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. And we are just about out of time. Did anybody have any questions before we go? Margaret says she loves it. Thank you, Margaret. I'll probably work on it just a little bit more and kind of refine things just a little bit. But I really do like to stop before I think it's finished and walk away from it for a little bit, because it just helps to come back with fresh eyes and get some perspective on it. But we will go ahead and stop there. Again, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining. And it's always a pleasure to kind of hang out with you guys and paint. I hope you will go over to my website and check out the Unlocking Color Secrets monthly lessons. There's also, if you sign up for the newsletter, there is 3 free lessons that you'll get right off the bat. So they're just short little mini lessons that might help you with your composition and how to get thick strokes. But I appreciate you guys being here, and y'all have a wonderful week.